pay for equal work for the women of our country. Senator Mikulski has been a tireless advocate for policies that bolster the American middle class and has been a champion for many, many years for pay equity for women. And I thank her very much for all that she has done. And I also want to concur with the strong remarks of Senator Murray, who has also been a champion for pay equity. To my mind, it is very hard to defend the current reality in which women continue to earn 78 cents on the dollar compared to men. And that's what we want to end, that discrimination against women workers. This is an issue of justice, but it is also an issue of economics. Because when we establish pay equity in this country, equal pay for equal work, millions of women will receive higher pay, and many of them and their families will leave the ranks of the poor. So this is an extraordinarily important amendment for justice. It's an important amendment for economic rights. Madam President, the pay gap that we see in this country is found at every level of education, at every stage of a career. So no matter how hard women work, it is next to impossible to overcome it because they move up the ranks, but there's still pay inequity. The pay equity gap has significant bearing on the economic status of female-led households. Only 18% of families headed by single moms have economic security. Only 18% of families headed by single moms have economic security. Female-headed households are twice as likely to live in poverty as male-headed households, and more than half of poor children live in female-headed households. It is no surprise that a lifetime of lower earnings results in fewer retirement savings and lower Social Security benefits for women. Senior women are twice as likely as senior men to live in poverty, and the average senior woman receives approximately $4,000 less a year than a senior man. Senior women are more likely than senior men to rely on Social Security as their sole source of income, especially if they are unmarried. Madam President, my state of Vermont has done better than most in terms of pay equity, and in fact is first in the nation in making sure that women get equal pay for equal work. But even in the state of Vermont, which leads the nation in this area, women in my state are still only earning 91 cents for every dollar that a male makes. So we have done better than the rest of the country. We have more to do, but the rest of the country has a whole lot more to do if we are going to fulfill the promise of equal pay for equal work. So, Madam President, I hope very much that we will all be supporting Senator Mikulski's very important amendment. Madam President, in terms of the overall Republican budget, and I say this in all due respect, one of the reasons I suspect that media is not particularly interested in this budget is when they look at it, they find it to be so preposterous, so unbelievable, so unrealistic that nobody really takes it seriously. And certainly many of the major provisions in it are not going to be turned into law. Let me go out on the limb, but I think I am fairly safe in saying that President Obama is not going to sign legislation that abolishes Obamacare. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it is fairly safe to say that. But the Republican budget wastes a whole lot of time and energy by proposing the repeal of Obamacare. And let me tell you what the repeal of the Affordable Care Act would mean in this country. And I know people will think I'm exaggerating. I'm not. And if I am not telling the truth, I want my Republican friends to come down here, or when they get the floor, say, Senator Sanders was inaccurate. Please tell me that. But we have read the legislation and I am not inaccurate. If you repeal the Affordable Care Act, it would eliminate health insurance coverage for 16 million people. 16 million people would lose the health insurance they currently have. Today, we are the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people. Today, despite the modest gains of the Affordable Care Act, 35 million Americans have no health insurance. So the Republicans say 35 million without health insurance, that's not enough. Let's raise that number to 51 million by eliminating the Affordable Care Act. But they go further than that. The Republicans say that we should cut Medicaid by $400 billion over the next decade. Medicaid is the program that provides health insurance for lower-income Americans and also, very significantly, for older people who are in nursing homes. So this is not, if you think this is just a low-income issue, you think it's not a middle-class issue, think again, because that might be your mom, who is 90 years of age, who is in a nursing home, which is being paid by Medicaid. Could be your dad, who is dealing with Alzheimer's in a nursing home, being paid for by Medicaid. And what the Republicans propose is a $400 billion cut over the next decade, which would deny health insurance to an additional 11 million Americans, including millions of children. So, you know, my arithmetic may not be too good, but I do think that if you add 16 million who lose health insurance through the ending of the Affordable Care Act to 11 million who lose health insurance by a $400 billion cut in Medicaid, 16 plus 11 is 27 million Americans who would lose health insurance, almost doubling the number of people who have health insurance. Does anybody in their right mind take this proposal seriously? It is beyond comprehension. It would cause massive chaos, disruption in the United States of America. This means that low-income pregnant women who need to make sure, as Senator Durbin mentioned a moment ago, that they get the health care that they need when they're pregnant, they would lose their health insurance. A kid who's in a car which has an automobile accident, that child would lose his or her health insurance. A worker who feels a pain in his chest, needs to go to the doctor, doesn't have any health insurance, doesn't go to the doctor, dies, well, that's the result of cutting 27 million people off of health insurance. So, in a certain sense, we needn't discuss the issue terribly much because it is such an absurd proposal that I don't think there are too many people who would take it seriously. But we should also understand that when my Republican colleagues talk about ending the Affordable Care Act, what they are also doing is denying for over 2 million young adults the right to stay on their parents' health insurance plan until the age of 26. As a result of the Affordable Care Act, if you are previously, you would be dropped from health insurance, your parents' health insurance when you were 21. The Affordable Care Act keeps you on until 26. So suddenly, if you're 24 years of age and you have health insurance through your parents' health program, you're gone, you're out. The Affordable Care Act would bring us back to a very dark age in America's medical history. And that was the time, not so many years ago, before the ACA, when if you had a pre-existing condition. Can you imagine? Now we think it's so crazy, it's hard to believe this existed 7 or 8 years ago. Woman walks in to a doctor, into an insurance company, looking for health insurance. She said, yes, I had breast cancer 10 years ago, and I had an operation dealing with breast cancer, and the insurance company says, oh, you had breast cancer? We can't cover you. That might recur. Somebody else walks in and said, well, I had, a heart attack, or I had a stroke 8 years ago. Oh, that's a pre-existing condition. You're discriminated against. We don't want you. You might get sick again. Incredibly enough, then, the people who needed insurance the most were people who insurance companies said, sorry, we are not going to provide insurance to you. The Republican budget brings back those dark days. The Republican budget will say to insurance companies, again, that being a woman is an illness. Being pregnant is an illness. And insurance companies will be able to discriminate against women and charge them extra for the crime of being a woman. That makes sense to anybody? I don't think so. But that is, in fact, what is in the Republican budget. Madam President, we have worked long and hard. This is an issue that has been dear to my heart for a very long time, and that is the knowledge that many of our seniors cannot afford the prescription drugs they need. Because of the power of the pharmaceutical company in this country, our people are forced to pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Not just the simple reality, and a very serious problem. Generic drug prices are soaring. And you have many seniors and many Americans who have a variety of illnesses. They go to the doctor writes a prescription, and you know what happens? I remember talking to a doctor in the northern part of Vermont. She said her guess is that 1 out of 4 of her patients do not fill the prescriptions they write because they simply can't afford it. And when you're older, by definition, you're often sicker and you need medicine. The Republican budget resolution that we are debating now would increase prescription drug prices for some 4 million seniors and persons with disabilities who are on the Medicare Part D program by reopening the donut hole. For years, we have tried to close that hole, make sure that the elderly do not have to pay for prescription drug costs out of their own pockets. Republican budget will undo the progress that we have made. The bottom line of the Republican budget suggests the huge philosophical divide that exists in this chamber. But interestingly enough, I don't think it exists within the American people. And I think the more the American people understand about the Republican budget, the more they would understand that something is fundamentally wrong with that budget. Where many of us come from is we look at an America in which the wealthiest people are doing phenomenally well. I had a chart up yesterday, which was just to me really extraordinary. It pointed out that in the last 2 years, the 14 wealthiest people in this country, all multi-billionaires, combined saw an increase in their wealth in a 2-year period, 14 people, of $157 billion. 14 people in a 2-year period, $157 billion increase in their wealth. That's literally beyond comprehension. That increase in wealth in a 2-year period is more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people own in their entirety. Some of us believe that when multi-billionaires see a huge increase in their wealth, such that the top 1/10 of 1% now own more wealth, almost more wealth than the bottom 90%, that maybe they should be asked to pay more in taxes. That's what we believe. Our Republican colleagues disagree. They have nothing of significance to say about income and wealth inequality. And their view is that if you want to deal with the deficit and you want to deal with the national debt, the only way to go forward is to make horrendous, catastrophic cuts in programs that middle-income and working-class people desperately need, programs that they desperately need. So I've talked a little bit about the Republican cuts in health care, but I also should mention that there are major cuts in education. I can tell you, because I've had a number of town meetings on this issue in my state of Vermont, that almost all of the young people I talk to are extremely worried about the high cost of college and about the debts that are wrapped around their shoulders when they graduate college. What does the Republican budget do to address the crisis of the affordability of college and the deep debts that millions of our young people face when they leave school? Well, instead of addressing the problem, they make it even worse. Hard to believe, but it is true. The Republican budget would eliminate mandatory Pell Grants. Pell Grants are the federal program that helps low-income and working class students get help in going to college. So at a time when it is harder to afford college, the Republican proposal eliminates mandatory Pell Grants, cutting this program by nearly $90 billion over the next 10 years, which would increase the cost of a college education for more than 8 million Americans. Now, what can we say about that? People today can't afford to go to college. Students are leaving school deeply in debt. And what the Republicans say is that, well, let's cut $90 billion in mandatory Pell Grant funding and increase the cost of a college education for more than 8 million Americans. I can tell you that in Vermont and throughout this country, I know working-class families have a very, very difficult time finding quality, affordable child care. The Republican budget addresses this problem by making a bad situation worse and coming forward with a budget which would mean that 110,000 fewer young children would be able to enroll in Head Start over the next 10 years. We need to expand Head Start. We need to expand preschool education. We need to expand child care. The most important years of a human being's life are 0 to 4. Those little kids need the intellectual and emotional nourishment that good preschool education and child care provides them. Republican proposal knocked 110,000 kids off of Head Start. Under the Republican budget, 1.9 million fewer students would receive the academic help they need to succeed in school by cutting about $12 billion in the Title I education program, which is focused on the needs of lower-income kids. The Individuals with Disability Education Act would be cut by $10 billion. So here's the point. At the end of the day, what politics is about is which side are you on? Are you on the side of millionaires and billionaires and large campaign contributors, or are you on the side of working families who are struggling to keep their heads above water economically, who are trying to figure out how they're going to send their kids to college, trying to figure out how they're going to help take care of their parents, trying to figure out how they're going to pay their rent or in some cases even pay for their groceries. That's what this debate is about. And what the Republicans are saying loudly and clearly is, no, the rich are getting phenomenally richer. We're not going to ask them to pay a nickel more in taxes. Corporations are enjoying record-breaking profits, and you have major corporation after major corporation paying zero in federal income tax because they stash their money in tax havens so they can avoid all taxes to the United States government. But we're not going to ask them to pay a nickel more in taxes. And that is what this debate is about. Which side are you on? And I think that the vast majority of the people in this country want the United States Senate to stand up for the middle class, for the working families of this country, and ask the billionaires and the large multinational corporations to start paying their fair share of taxes. And with that, Madam President, I would yield the floor.